Welcome, everybody. If you just got here, this is Portfolio Club. We've been doing this every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. I think, what is it, 5 or 6 p.m. GMT, every week this summer. And the reason why we're doing this, if you haven't been to one before, because this is open to everyone, not just paid subscribers today. We want to make this open to everybody. Um, we hear from the design community that there are a lot of people who feel a sense of anxiety about the job market, anxiety about the shifting landscape of tools and processes and so forth, feeling like they're being left behind and it's just too much to keep up with every day. Exhausted is what we hear. We feel that the best way to address anxiety is with action. And creating a portfolio does two things. One, it gives you an opportunity to try new tools and processes like Claude Code, which we're going to be talking about today. Even if you're not a coder, you don't have an engineering or developer background, there's still a lot of stuff you can do with this. In fact, I would argue you are more empowered now than ever before. Sorry, my dog back here is being rather noisy as he settles into his nap. Um, and also at the same time, building a portfolio creates an opportunity for you to get that next role, to maybe find a new job, or, heaven forbid, you get laid off or let go. You have all of your work in one place, so you're ready to take action. That's why we're doing Portfolio Club. It goes to the end of this month, and then we're going to start some new stuff. But we do these weekly, and we've had different expert guests come every week, and they've been amazing. We've had Daniel Burka, who was at Google Ventures. You probably know him from Design Sprints. He's one of the co-authors of that. We've had Bob Baxley, who used to lead design at Pinterest and was at Apple a long time, working directly with Steve Jobs and Eddie Q on the Apple launch of the Apple online store. We had MDS, Matt D. Smith was on as well. And today we have not only an expert in Claude Code and an author of a very important reference as you start to figure out Claude Code and these new workflows, but also a member of the Design Better community. Joey, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And I'm such a big fan of the podcast. So it's really an honor to be here.
Yeah, Joey's on the flip side of the event today. He's been, I think, to every portfolio club so far and shared his portfolio. I would love it if you would drop your portfolio link in chat here, Joey, because I think people would be into that.
Yes.
Yeah,
I
there it is.
appreciate it. Cool.
And before we talk about some of the stuff that we've been publishing, I just want to give a quick shout out to all the folks who are here. We love it when people share where they are in the world, where you're tuning in from. So if you don't mind dropping that in. And if you're not already a Design Better subscriber, might be something to think about. It is certainly affordable. Joey, since you've been a subscriber for a long time, what's the value? Like, what's compelling about being a Design Better premium subscriber?
I love the interviews that you do, as well as all the new AI design founders and entrepreneurs that you have on the show. And just being a part of the Slack channel and the community is just so important now, especially as we are designing with AI and in these kind of silos to see how everybody else is using them, the best prompts, the best workflows, and just the people are so great and they're so welcoming. And if you have anything that you ever want to share out in the community, it's been a really great forum to be able to get feedback on it. And yeah, I can't highly recommend it enough.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Eli, what should we talk about? New stuff that's been launched from
Yeah,
you.
yeah, for sure. Well, just to follow on the portfolio club stuff. So one of the things we talk about the community. So we've been trying to have actually our first sort of welcome call for members and try to figure out ways to make it even more valuable for folks. And one thing that was mentioned by one of the members is having some more. We were doing a lot of internal sharing in the Slack community, but what if we had ways for folks to show stuff externally? And so yesterday we built this little prototype, which is just kind of showcases what's going on at Portfolio Club. So um, so I think I have pretty much all the ones that we've done so far, maybe missing a few, but you can see Joey's here and a few other folks who have been brave enough to step up and go through a little bit of a critique. And yeah, so this is very much an experiment, but we're always trying to think of ways to like make it more beneficial to our users. Um, on the content front, sorry, I have to share each tab here individually. We've had some cool stuff drop just recently. So just this morning, we had Ian Bogost, who's a game designer who's written a lot for The Atlantic and other publications. And he has a new book which talks about sort of the importance of everyday interactions with objects in ways that are sort of, in some ways, disappearing. So, as an example, you can think about you go into like an airport bathroom and you no longer have to turn on the faucet. Everything's automatic. The hand dryer is automatic. And while that's convenient, and yes, maybe spreads less germs, you're also losing some interactions that maybe were you kind of brought you more into the present moment. And he goes through a lot of these examples. I thought it was really interesting, and I'm always trying to think of more ways to be present and in the moment. So that was great. What did you get out of this particular interview?
I just want to point out there's been recent research that the hand dryers in bathrooms actually put out more microbes and disease than if you were to use a paper towel. That was surprising.
So sometimes
Um,
even these efforts backfire.
I loved talking to Ian because he's an academic, he's a writer, he's someone who thinks very deeply about design and how we interact with things in the world. And I think most designers, like, it's almost a burden that we pay attention to all the details so much. And Ian kind of in that conversation gives language to the feeling of that I think a lot of people are experiencing. We see I'm impressed and kind of blown away by how many Gen Z folks are um, tired of subscriptions, tired of like Spotify owns all my music and all my movies are owned over here by Prime or Apple or whatever. So they're like building their own physical local storage and doing a lot of records. You know, like records. Every time I go into a record store, is just overrun. Well, you got a visitor there, Joey.
His name is Toshi. This is my dog.
Ah.
Hey, Toshi.
Yeah, so that is if you are feeling a sense of disconnection from the world, that the world is digitizing and it's not always making us better, making the human experience better. Ian's interview is worth a listen.
Awesome. And then, Aaron, you also just wrote about a recent episode with two designers who wrote a book about the cover art design for Prestige Records.
Yeah.
Prestige has this history of creating some of these really amazing album covers, and there's an interesting story behind it. I want to dive into what you talked about there.
Yeah. So, two writers and academics published a beautiful, big hardcover coffee table book of the album covers and the artwork from 1950s and 1960s jazz records that came from Prestige, which was a label that was a contemporary and a competitor to Blue Note. We've probably all heard of Blue Note Records. We know Miles Davis and John Coltrane and so forth. Well, Prestige was also publishing amazing musicians, Sonny Rollins, Miles Davis, and others. And the covers were created by artists and photographers and graphic designers who were just like, they didn't have a brief. They could just do whatever they wanted. And so the art is just cool as hell. It's beautiful. I love finding pieces of art history like this example right here. It was a record cover for that by David X. Young that got rejected for Lester Young. His nickname was Prez or President, and he wore this hat all the time. And it's just like a really interesting collage painting thing. It didn't get published, but it was an interesting piece of art. This book is full of that backstory of the artists who made these. Look at this typography, like for Thelonious Monk. There's so much inspiration for us today about how to use typography in a unique way in these records, especially how it addresses the edges. You often see elements that kind of bump into the edges or go off the canvas. That is something that doesn't really happen in web design or application design these days. So we just dug into this deep with these two authors of the book, and this issue kind of shares some of that backstory. Fun weekend read.
Awesome. Great. And then one last thing before we get to the main event here. So we have before shared in September in-person event that we're working on. And let me once more share my screen here. This is not yet published, but it will be by tomorrow. So we're sharing some more of the details. You may have been and checked it out. It's going to be a fantastic event, very limited, 40 tickets, many of which have already been sold. We're featuring some really great guests like Cheryl Kababa, who currently works at Google, but has done a lot of amazing things over the years. My colleague and a fellow I taught with for many years at Stanford, Bill Burnett. He's author of Designing Your Life. We have Molly Moon, who does great ice cream and works on fair wages in the Seattle area. Paul Dichter, who is one of the head writers and producers for Stranger Things, has been on the show recently, another amazing guy.
Best
And then,
episodes of Stranger Things, and I'm a big fan.
and a few others here. I won't go into all the details, but it's happening September 28th, 29th. And we've actually got, this is the first time these will be available, few discount codes. So if you're just a general subscriber, you'll get this email tomorrow and you can take $100 off. This is for the version of the event where you book your own accommodation. And then for our premium folks, we've got 15% off, which is a really great deal. Again, booking your own accommodation, that'll be available to you if you're a paid subscriber.
Yeah, it's going to be a very fun event. I can't wait. And it's in a beautiful setting in Sonoma. Like, come on. It's going to be fun. All right. Well, let's jump into things. Folks, if you have played with Claude Code and been confused, or maybe you've never touched it and you don't know where to start, this is the conversation for you. Post your questions and we will answer them as we go. But Joey, I'm going to pass it over to you. And maybe you can just walk us through your workflow and tell us a little bit about how we get started using Claude Code to design a portfolio, SaaS product, whatever it is.
Sure, that sounds great. Hey, everyone. So nice to be here. My name is Joey, and I'm a designer in Silicon Valley for the last 15 years. I previously designed at LinkedIn, Google X Labs, and today I'm really excited to share with you how I use Claude Code in my workflow and even creating this website with all the subtle little details and animations like this. Typically, for a while in the last, I would say, few years, the design process, especially the craft and the detail, wasn't there. But now with Claude Code and all of the latest plugins, it's been really exciting for me as specifically a designer to be able to have all the tools to be able to also build and engineer the website, and how all of our roles in terms of design, PM, and engineering are kind of all molding into one now with this builder role. So this is an example of my website my portfolio that I have for all of my case studies. And as you can see here, the subtle little details that I was able to really care about and fuse into this product, as well as I have a design studio and created this website using the mouse cursor, all within Claude Code. And I also have a lot of ideas for weekend side projects and apps that I launch on the App Store. So here you can see some examples of apps that I've also published directly to the App Store, all thanks to having Claude here. And one thing that people are loving to do, especially on X right now, is to post their screenshots of, I just submitted a few apps last Friday and already starting to get first customers without having to actually promote any of these products right now. And I can show you how to do that. I also just recently wrote a book on Claude Code where I combined all of the new workflows, but it was able to really help me edit and publish it directly to Amazon. So the first way I submitted I put the link in the chat there, but you can download Claude Code if you haven't already. They have the desktop Mac OS version where you can use code here, or I prefer using it in the terminal, and you can use it either in the terminal, whatever you're most comfortable with, or you can also download the desktop app now. And I created this AI design quest website to show kind of previously, even with Daniel Burka and Google Ventures, they had the 5-day design sprints, and now how that design sprint is now being compressed into even one day. You can build, test, learn your ideas and start getting validation much sooner, and even get stakeholder buy-in much faster. And I'll show you some of the tips that I use to create some of the products that I just showed today. So the first thing, I have Claude in the terminal set up. The plugin that I usually recommend using, if you go to slash plugins, is the front end design tool. This one is created by Anthropic, and it's really helpful for creating more, I would say, beautiful visual design, interaction design, and having that skill available. And then I first always start with a plan file. So instead of just asking Claude to create an app or create a website, this prompt here that I dropped in the chat is really helpful for being able to help define your product in that early stage of your design process. So I can say, create me a plan file for any product idea that you have. It could be a website, an app, or anything, but I'll just say, for example, like a boutique VC firm website. Say I have a client that wants to do this, and interview me in detail using the Ask User Question tool. And so what that will do, it's a skill that will help be able to interview me on any items like technical implementation, UI, UX, concerns, trade offs. And once I run that, it'll ask me about a series of 25 questions. And in terms of, what are those basic problems that we're trying to solve? Who is the target audience? And it'll give me a few rounds to really help me be like a AI thought leader of someone who I can manage like any of the edge cases or things that I'm, maybe not have considered for the product. And it will start asking me these questions. And so for example, like, what is the site for? Is this a real firm, prototype, or portfolio piece? And I can say this is a prototype. Actually, I'll say it's a real firm for now. And what design direction should be the site lean into? So this is already getting into, the art direction. Do I want it like a quiet luxury style, or Brutus confident, or warm and modern, or dark and cinematic? So usually the first questions, the answer is the recommended one is the first one. But I can say for this one, say I want it warm and modern. What tech stack do you want? I'll say just the HTML and CSS. And what pages and sections should the site include? So I'll say that I want the home. This is a multiple choice question. The team, writing letters, submit. And I'll continue asking, it'll continue asking these questions until I get to something like this, which is the plan file. And this is just an example of an iOS app that I created. But here you can see that it really helped me define the vision statement, the mission, who is the target audience, all the jobs to be done of each of the target audiences, any sort of the design implications, each of the segments, the core product decision. So this kind of uses a Moscow method of must have, should we have, or maybe can save post MVP. So it will help define both the MVP and the vision for the app, and help define the scope. The
Hey, Joey,
feature.
can we push on this a little bit? Because I think this is
Yeah.
like a key tripping point for most people. We're very much accustomed to, like, if I'm going to make something, I kind of have to know all the details of what I'm making. And that's really not the case anymore. So what you're doing is not unlike what Eli has heard Johnny Ive talk about, which is starting a design or a product in a Google Doc, or like
Hmm.
just writing instead of designing. Normally
Hmm.
we jump into Figma and we kind of explore, but this is different territory here. We are just saying, like, okay, I want to make this. These are the essential things. How might I approach this? And I think it's also like asking open-ended questions instead of saying, this is how I'm going to do it. Because I have found when I do that with Claude Code, it actually makes some better suggestions of things that I didn't even know existed.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. I think our job as designers are really changing from more of the executional work and being in the pixels and the execution work in Figma to now going much higher level and being able to work on the design strategy and working on the vision and the mission and much higher level types of design thinking that is really exciting, but it's definitely been shifting our work as designers to almost think of us more as like the PM or an entrepreneur
Yeah.
that's a strategist, and this will help fill out all the gaps that things that you might have not considered, like all the edge cases or corner cases that you're also mentioning. This really helps fill out the gaps so you have a full fledged product plan and strategy doc that you can work off of and then build your prototypes off of this. So I think this is really important to first start off with. I know a lot of designers now that are just, similar to Johnny Ive, but just going into a Notion doc, a Google doc, and defining all of these core basic questions
Mhm.
early on. And speaking of all these basic questions, it's something similar that even Jake Knapp does with the latest book on creating your foundation hypothesis. And so this is
Mhm.
something that I also do with clients too, of if we help this customer solve this problem, work on these solutions because they'll choose us over the competitors. So this will help answer all of those questions
Yeah.
and really make it easier for us to create the app that we or the product that we envision.
Have you tried out the skill that Y Combinator has called office hours?
I just saw that. Yes, I know they're also creating YC is creating a way to be able to see your prompts and be able to help share and learn from each other. And I think that's really wonderful because
Yeah.
these are all tips that I've just learned myself. And I think now that we're creating this community of build or learn, teach, learn, where we can learn from each other more. And I think now it's more important that we have these types of learning mechanisms in place.
Yeah. Yeah, the Y Combinator office hours thing, it's basically turning the workflow that they have if as if you were in Y Combinator building a product. They ask some standard questions of YC members. And so it's a prompt, say like, okay, here's this product that I'm building. Here's the brief about it. Now run this through YC office hours. And it's going to
Mm.
ask you a bunch of questions about like, what makes this unique? What moat do you have to, competitive advantage over other products already on the market, et cetera. That can be a good way to stress test an idea if you're trying to build a product. I don't think you need that for a portfolio necessarily, but even still, like building a portfolio, I shared this earlier on. I started my portfolio by writing a Google Doc and then sharing that with Claude to get started.
Yeah, that's really great. And especially if you're a freelance designer or you're working even in a big company, I think as a designer, having this full picture in mind and something that's, this doc that you can share out and get that problem alignment much easier. It's just getting that kind of stakeholder buy-in, building the trust with the client is really important to, start building this just to make sure that everybody's on the same page before we go into the solution alignment and start going deeper. But yeah, that's been really great. So this has been super helpful in terms of asking these questions, but once we have this plan file, I use sites. There's this one called Motion Sites, and you can see here that there's, it's say you're building a landing page for this. They have a lot of really great examples. If you're familiar with like Webflow or even Squarespace, I tend to think the quality of these landing pages and motion is even better. And you
Mm.
can say if you want something in this style, you can copy this prompt and then go. What I usually do in here is saying using the plan file, create me a landing page using this theme. And then you just paste in the pasted text of the full prompt, and it will be able to create something in the look and feel of that style. And of course, you can edit it and modify it and make iterations on it. There's another site called sceneai.art, and you can also do the same thing where you can copy each of the prompts over and as you're starting to look into the art direction of the site. There's another one called Save, Savee. This is a new one where I really love, if I'm just as a designer, to look for typography inspiration or art direction for an app. I can just even take any sort of image and say, I want, say like this typography, take a screenshot and then paste it into Claude code. And you can say, make, look more like this typography style. And I'll create kind of this mood board of inspiration for how I want the product to look and feel. And I'll spend a lot of time creating these kind of like mood boards for each of the products to kind of get the look and feel right. Um, and then I think design is kind of like the moat, but also distribution is the moat. Now that it's cheaper to build all these products so much faster, you have to have a built-in network to start sharing it with people. And there's a tool called Origami that I use to start getting my first customers that I can test with. So, for instance, I created a fitness app and I wanted to look for who would be the best influencer marketing people that I can start testing it with and getting their feedback really early on.
Hmm.
So, this has been a great product for me to find who my target audience is and start testing it with them and getting their feedback early so I can get some of my first network of audience members.
Are you cold emailing or are you going through Origami to contact them directly because they already have an account?
Yeah, so you can either say run it for me, and it will send almost create an agent for you to send emails and LinkedIn messages on your behalf. Or what I've noticed has the highest, usually return is if you craft it and message these people directly in DMs, and you can ask them, to try your app and to have a promo code or some way that you're interested in being able to. They would be interested in downloading your app and
Yeah,
your product. But it's been really great to, like, even if you have an idea, to first find who your market is,
yeah,
because distribution is the hardest thing now. There's so many apps on the App Store, it's flooded, and so really just having that, the built-in first 100 members of an email list that you can start creating a newsletter and messaging them to get on your product would be better. But I'm curious, have you used something like this too, to like kind of in any of your workflows to be able to start getting your first people to try out your prototype?
I haven't seen this before, but super useful because we've been working on a SaaS product, and we're just kind of manually emailing people with coupon codes to see, to get some folks added here.
hmm So that's kind of the last part of the test, and you can start, shipping it and getting their feedback. But as you can see here, the double diamond approach is really compressed now, and you can start building and testing with members. And you can have an idea in the shower, have a shower thought, and then by the afternoon, like,
Yeah,
be able to start, getting people's feedback on it really early. So it's
yeah.
been definitely a very exciting time, I would say, and I'm happy to if there's anybody who's interested in learning more, connect with me on LinkedIn or X, and love to, also walk you through any of my process and just continue sharing a part of any of the new AI design tools that you're using.
That's great. Well, let's talk a little bit about tech stack.
Mhm.
Um, so many designers feel, in the words of Josh Clark, who was a former guest on the show, Josh and Veronica wrote a really great book called Sentient Design, which is how AI can kind of help us build tools and build experiences. He said, GitHub and these developer spaces are not really comfortable for designers, for most designers. Um, Using Claude Code, I always use GitHub. I use Vercel. I typically use either Supabase or Neon for a database.
Mhm.
And then there's some other services, like Google OAuth I might use for, log in with your Google account, et cetera. So there's kind of like a standard tech stack. And it often goes to like Next.js as the foundation or the platform for products. Um, Do designers need to know about these things? Do they need to know how to spin this stuff up? What do they need to know to really start building something that's stable and usable?
Yeah. So it helps having the foundational understanding, I would say, of how these tools are being used. But as you can see here, I'm just using natural language in a Claude code. And I
Mhm.
say words like create me a prototype. And what it'll do is create a GitHub repo for me to push the HTML and CSS files
Yeah.
to it. And so it's been really fun. Like even when I was working with engineers and these prototypes would take 2 or 3 weeks, and I would hear things like cron job and all these like very
Yeah.
technical terms. But now I'm actually able to do it myself and not need to know the technical components necessarily of it. But I've been learning a lot just even watching it work, because I see the structure of how it's being able to orchestrate and create these the technical stack that I need. And of course, an engineer would know if I'm over engineering it, or if I'm, like I think
Sure.
they would be able to see a little bit more if they can guide it or mold it a little bit more for the best way for my prototype. But I've been using Cloudflare to host all of
Yep.
my like URLs or my domains that I buy, and then I can just change the name servers and then point it to these free hosting sites on Cloudflare, and they're completely free, so you don't have to worry about hosting costs or anything like that. I have the Claude Code Max plan, so that's $100 a month, and that's pretty much the only expense that I'm using right now.
Yep.
And so it's really cheap to be able to test these ideas more than
Yes.
ever. And you don't need to know now, being more technical about how GitHub and these tools work, but you can see in the back end how it's doing it for you. And yeah, it's basically, I talk to a lot of engineers now too, and even in Silicon Valley in the last year, they're not coding anymore, and it's crazy to me, right? Like coders are
Eli's
not.
brother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had two brothers actually that are developers, and they just basically shepherd agents along. One other tip I was going to say, which is I've found helpful. I think people sometimes get stuck. Let's say you have to set up something kind of complex like Google OAuth, where you come to this dashboard and there's just like 100 different options of what you need to do next.
Yep.
You can take a screenshot of where you get stuck and then put that in Claude Code. Say, hey, I'm stuck. Where do I go next? Or you asked me to do this, but I don't know where to go. So it can actually be like
Guide me.
just a visual guide. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There are like, if you're doing anything with Google developer tools, Microsoft developer tools, those interfaces are not designed for mere mortals. They're so complex. And so just screenshotting and saying guide me is helpful.
Mhm.
Another thing I want to point out that has been very useful to me. So you started out, Joey, with that big doc of like, here's all the stuff that I want to build. And sometimes that can be like a dozen features or a lot of complexity. And each one of those things might have a lot of details, a lot of meat to them. So what I do is once I have a GitHub repo set up, a repo is not just for code, it also has issues attached. So if you've ever used Jira or any sort of backlog ticketing system, that can be a really useful tool, even if you're just working by yourself. So what I'll do is say, like, here are all these features, these things I want to build. Um, Please create detailed issues about every single step that needs to be done and file those in GitHub issues. Then when I get to the end of a feature, I can say, go pick the next obvious thing to work on from GitHub issues and get started. It'll tell me why it chooses that, how it prioritizes, and it's already like got all of its memory in there of everything that I want to do. That is a way to be super productive, and let the AI kind of not go off track.
I'll throw in another tip that it's something that Aaron built that I found extremely helpful. So we put together a style guide for Design Better that has, and I'll share my screen, show it in a minute, but basically has all the typography and colors and other assets you would want to have to make a new site or product. And I can point Claude at that if I'm building something new. In fact, that portfolio club link I shared earlier, I made it, like about 15 minutes, just pointing it to the style guide that Aaron just linked to there. It's so helpful if you're trying to build consistency. It's not going to be everything perfect the first time, but at least it gives you a good starting point and you can make
Yeah.
adjustments. So that's been a real game changer.
There's a trick with this too. So designbetter.style is where our style guide lives. I found that I was building multiple things and it just looked inconsistent and it was killing me, just driving me crazy. So I guided it through like, hey, I want to create a design system. It should be like a publicly accessible site. And not only does it have guidance for humans, it has guidance for AI agents. You'll see there's a section on the left hand side that says for agents, for AI
Mm.
agents. And that has details of for agents that I can just point this URL to any agent and say, I'm building a new product. Here's the design system. Here's how to use this. And I built an MCP server. This kind of is next level of, I know a lot of folks at Google and Microsoft who are using AI in really sophisticated ways. They do this. MCP is a protocol. It's model context protocol created by Anthropic, and it's just a way to give an AI agent all the context it needs to interface with another product or another system of some sort. So I can point an agent to that and it'll just consume our style sheet or style guide design system and build everything to spec. And then, so I noticed that sometimes agents still trip and I get buttons that are rounded in ways that are not very, they don't conform to our rules. So the agent that built the design system is also the gatekeeper. Just like in companies, there's someone who is sort of evaluating or the librarian who takes care of that design system. So I will say, hey, design system agent, please evaluate this product and write a detailed prompt for the building agent to help it correct all of the nonconformities. Writes that, give that over, boom, everything gets fixed. And I got to tell you, the building agent, when it gets that prompt from the other AI agent, it's like, wow, this is so detailed. Thank you so much. It loves it.
No M dashes. Yes.
Yes,
No.
no M dashes. Yeah, so we've got our voice and
Great.
tone in here, and
Yeah.
I have fed um, Claude Code everything that Eli and I have ever written in Design Better. All of our books, all of our articles, so it knows our voice and how we write. And then when we're creating new interfaces, new sites, it can help us, conform to that.
This is beautiful. Yeah, a best practices guide is always really important for any design system. I remember Material Design 3 doing a really good job of saying, these are the things that we should do, these are the things that you shouldn't do. And especially as you onboard new designers onto your team, just to have this source of truth file that you're able to show examples of
Yeah.
and feed it. And is this also on the GitHub too that they're pulling from, or you just even copy and paste the URL and put it into
The URL
Claude?
alone is sufficient.
Yeah.
And I've done these evaluations of products so much that I ended up creating a skill with Claude that's just the evaluate skill. I think that's a really good thing to spend some time doing. And again, you can just communicate with Claude Code with regular natural language. Help me build a skill that
Yes.
evaluates new pages, new sites, new products against our design system. You might also add like an evaluation skill based on the Nielsen Norman usability heuristics or accessibility standards. I found that to be super useful too, to build that stuff in.
I also built a skill too called crit, where it was basically being able to see what is blocking the design, what is important, and what are things that you can polish on. So it checks over 10
Yeah.
different dimensions of like hierarchy, spacing, motion, accessibility, layout, responsiveness, typography, to make sure that anything, it will evaluate your design. So if you have a website or prototype, you can just type in design crit this website or design review this website, and it will be able to give you all the recommendations of what, how it looks good on
Hmm.
desktop, web, and mobile, and be able to give you recommendations for how to improve your design. So this is especially valuable for non-designers that might not have like the principles in mind, or people that
Yeah.
don't know about hierarchy or layout, but it can really help you make sure that it's getting the best possible design, even if they're not able to articulate it in the best way. So I find these design skills, also very valuable to make your design and the quality and the craft something you're really proud of. And
Hmm.
it actually feels more like it's not designed by AI with the purple and black
Yeah.
background that you're used to seeing, but it actually feels like something that,
Tailwinds.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I wanted to address something that came up in the comments here. So Danielle said there's so much to learn; it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people feel that, but just I think if you're feeling overwhelmed, figure out something really small to just play with one of these tools. Like one tool, just use Claude Code. I've done all these little toy apps, that take maybe like 15, 20 minutes, and or something that you're like that's bugging you. Like I wish I had this little calendar tool or something like that, and
Or I'm
just
planning
the
an itinerary
process.
for a trip, and I just want a web page of that. Like,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Something really small and constrained, and just going through that will help you to start to build your confidence, and you can kind of build on that and build bigger and bigger things over time. And one example of that for Aaron and I is we've been building this internal tool, which is now an external tool for doing interviews, but started as a very simple thing that was just like, hey, I want to put in a link and get some background research on this person. It was super simple. It was like one prompt. And then Aaron took that and ran with it. And now it's this, kind of tool that has all these different complexity to it and things that it can do. But you can start with something that's really, really simple and go from there.
yeah, there's a slippery slope. It's very fun. So Joey, can you paste the link to that skill, that crit skill?
Yes, I will do that in the chat here.
And then I wanted to ask you and then everybody else who's here if they've come across impeccable.style, which is it's a design prompt tool. I have not tried it yet, so I don't know if it's good. I looks pretty cool.
Pull that up here.
One more question from Danielle is, can I do anything with free tools or you have to pay? I think you can certainly experiment with a lot of the free tools, even like within Claude, with the free version of Claude, you can create little artifacts, things like that. So you don't necessarily have to pay. You're going to get further if you can even afford the $20 a month version. I would say it's going to pay dividends just to have that access. But if you currently can't, there's a lot of free tools out there that you can use.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a ton of free stuff. I mean, a lot of what we are using, like we have a Neon database that was free, Vercel that was free, GitHub free. And it's just a matter of like, there's so many free open source tools, and you don't have to know them. You just say, I want to do this, and Claude's going to say, okay, I think we'll try these things out, and then just ask like, well, teach me about that. What is that? It's just really about asking questions and being curious, which um, that's very exciting.
Speaking of which, if anybody has other questions, like Danielle, feel free to
Yeah.
drop questions in the chat.
Joey, are you doing any cross agent work, and or are you using Claude Design? There's a new version that came out
Mhm.
recently. Curious if you're playing with that.
Yes, so I've used Claude Design actually for that design crit tool. It's really great at creating presentations. So if you have any sort of docs that you need, I find that has been the one of the greatest use cases. It also creates those marketing videos really well, and I think it's more geared towards the Canva crowd, the non-designers that don't need that much level of detail and flexibility on or precision that you would get necessarily within the terminal or within Claude Code. But it makes it a lot easier to have a front end interface, especially for biz dev, marketing, PM, to be able to create prototypes faster within Claude Design. And then for agents, so again, AI is agents are things that do things on your behalf and can actually achieve jobs for you. So I do have a few agents that I run for any new design that I create. I have it sent to Slack or Instagram. Instagram channels for content management. And there are a lot of amazing, that's probably what I'll do the second book actually on, is more
Mm.
around AI agents flows, because I get a lot of inbound requests for, how to use agents effectively now. I'm curious though, are you using them in any, way with the Design Better podcast or in part of the community?
Um, I'm using Claude Design occasionally. I use it as sort of like, let me write something, get something started, tweak that,
Mhm,
um, and further refine, bring that into Claude Code. So I go back and forth, kind of like pouring water from glass to glass.
mhm,
And then I use Codex, which is ChatGPT's version of Claude Code, and I do code reviews. So I'm always a little paranoid of like, is the quality of this code good? Is it secure? Is it accessible, et cetera? So I'll go over to a different AI coding tool and say, here's this repo, here's all this code. Can you look at it, tear it apart, find security vulnerabilities or accessibility issues, usability issues, et cetera? Write me a prompt to give to the building agent to help it resolve that. And some of that stuff is not real. It's not real problems. It's just like this doesn't have quite the context that Claude Code did where I built it. But there are a lot of things it finds. To AI agents do make mistakes, and to have cross evaluation is very helpful, even if it's within the same AI tool. But I like to do both within the same tool and across tools. Um, that's very helpful.
It's also can be helpful in an adjacent way if you run out of tokens in one tool. I've ported
There you
projects over in between. Like, okay, I'm done with that one. I got to go over to Codex and use that.
Yeah, Sean Smith said impeccable is always moving fast with updates and new features. I couldn't keep up. Interesting. That's cool.
Yeah, I'd love to learn more about this too. Um, the missing design vocabulary for agents.
Yeah. I think anything that helps agents understand design better, um, I'm super interested in. I still design stuff in Figma. That's useful. By the way, like, you don't have to go whole hog as we're describing here, where you start from prompting. You can go to Figma. You can design things the way that you want it to look. Bring that over to Claude Code and say, "Help me build this." You can even say, "Help me build a responsive version of this." Like for different viewport sizes. So there's a lot of flexibility in what the workflow can look like to be at your comfort level. I'm finding I can get 80%, like 80% there very quickly with a prompt, but that last 20
Mhm,
to 10% of like dialing in the details can be a big pain in the butt.
mhm.
And so I might take a screenshot of that or, like have it export to Figma and then go tweak those things myself and come back. That's another approach you could take.
I've also noticed that too. That last 20% or 10% of iterating is usually what takes the longest amount of time. The 0 to 1 phase is really exciting because it's within 5 or 10 minutes, but then that 1 to N phase of iterating back and forth. And so one of the things that I typically do is bulk my feedback in a revisions file, so I don't have to keep prompting it back and forth to make it look like this or do this, and kind of save time prompting back and forth on small little changes, and try to bulk upload them into one. So that's a little bit of a faster hack to get to that 100% of your first MVP. Um, but yeah, but it's definitely great to continue learning and sharing all these tools with you. And if there's more, feel free to share in the Slack channel thread, and love to check them out too.
Yeah. I'm just posting a quick link here in chat. So we've been doing Portfolio Club for a little over 2 months, concludes at the end of this month. We're going to turn everything that we've learned about building a great portfolio, the best practices of that, plus, some of the things we're talking today about using Claude Code, Claude Design, other tools out there, into a single single point reference, and probably some sort of Claude Code skill to help you evaluate your work. That's going to come out in August, but it will only be available for our paid subscribers. So if that's interesting to you, I just dropped a link in chat to get 20% off an annual subscription. We would love to have you come into the community. Not only are you going to get access to that and our books and all of our events and their toolkit, but you're going to get into Slack. And that's kind of the key thing. Like Joey's been doing a lot of stuff and getting feedback and sharing feedback with a community of great designers in the Design Better community Slack. So if you're starting to play with this stuff, you want to like build with other people and get feedback. I mean, we have people who are posting videos, like Loom videos of them building with these tools, showing how stuff's done in Slack right now. If that's interesting to you, you want help along the way, you feel a little stressed, like, I don't know where to start, I don't know how to do this. That can be a lifeline for you getting into that Slack channel. There's a lot of really talented people like Joey who are in there and former guests of Design Better. So something to think about. It's certainly affordable and expensible.
And if we also don't want to make cost a barrier to anybody, if you're between jobs or if you're a student, shoot us an email, subscriptions at the Curiosity Department, and we'll give you a year-long scholarship. So that's another path.
What other things have you learned, Joey, about working with Claude Code or just AI agents in general? Stuff you're excited about, stuff that you want to explore further?
Yeah, I think overall, I know there's a lot of uncertainty, and it's a time of the AI doom and gloom, kind of mentality, especially in the States, having that kind of, uncertainty of
Yeah,
how these are. But I would tend to look at it, I think, as seeing that there's so many new opportunities and possibilities, especially us as designers, to be able to generate more income outside of our day-to-day work, create and empower us to do more, not just replacing our creativity, but really amplifying, I feel like, our creativity. And it's just such a great time to be a builder. And I
mm,
would say in the last 15 years of being in Silicon Valley, I remember there's that kind of excitement in the Web 2 era when people were building social networks. But now I just feel everything is buzzing, especially in Silicon Valley now. People are really optimistic and excited for the future. And I mean, also, yes, overwhelming is an emotion that I also hear a
yeah,
lot of. There's so many new tools to be on board, and I think people feel like they're fearing of getting lost and getting left behind. But I feel with a community like this and other people that I talk to, it's just always good to be in that learning mode. Like I feel like
yeah,
we're continuously learning. That's why it's so great to be plugged into all the colleges and universities. I love going to Stanford actually, like even on the weekends and there's a lot of events that are going on with Anthropic and OpenAI and just trying to learn as much as you can. And yeah, just starting small, like Eli was saying, just being able to think of something that you want to see in the world and being able to now build it yourself and just ask about it. And the best way that you get from learning is by doing it, right? And
yeah,
just trying it out and seeing, there's very little to lose. So I feel like now is such a great time to be a builder and sharing your work in public. I think that's a big thing. A lot of people are sharing it on LinkedIn and X too, to be able to share their process and how they're building in public. Even you don't have to have the output perfect. You could just progress over perfection, continuously sharing your anything that you're working on, and that will also attract you to new opportunities. Uh, so yeah, those are just some things that I've seen in the community. But yeah, I'd love to hear more too about like how you've been battling, keeping up to date with all these latest tools, and maybe some resources or websites that you use to keep up to date with all of them too.
yeah. I mean, I'm mostly like, I'll watch stuff on YouTube a lot. Like, there's always YouTube channels that have new stuff like demos and things like that. I find that very helpful. Brooke Hopper, who's at Adobe, she's a principal product designer there. We had her on Portfolio Club. I think it was early July or late June. And there's a podcast that she listens to that's, do you remember what it's called, Eli? I think it's AI Today, something like
Yeah, I
that.
think that's right. Something like that. Yeah.
And it's just like a summary of what's happening with AI. So now, if you're feeling overwhelmed, that might not take you in the right direction. I think you just need to I'm going to start with one tool. I'm going to start with something I'm passionate about. I'm curious, and I'm going to see if I can build a thing. And I'm going to time box it and say I'm going to spend an hour on this thing. That's a great way to start.
Yeah. One side that I even pre sort of AI explosion that I went to a lot, and I'm very much a designer, not a developer, but it's Hacker News is kind of
Yeah,
developer oriented, but just it's so a lot of the stuff if you're not a developer is not going to be of interest necessarily, but usually there's something on there that's interesting. The discussions are often interesting,
yeah,
and sometimes a little heated, but but it just is a place to go to figure out what's happening with this technology, where is it headed. I think it's an interesting place to dive into.
I think it's worth as we wrap up here, just to touch on the anxiety thing one more time. There's a transition right now where I'd say last 6 months we thought, okay, AI is going to replace us, and we even heard Dario Amodei, co-founder and CEO of Anthropic, we're going to see 20% unemployment. That's just not shaking out. There's the tech industry has definitely laid off and restructured. But what we're seeing is a lot of executives and a lot of companies recognizing that having humans in the workforce is still not just a nice to have, it's essential. And tokens and AI tools, they're not a solution for everything. The budgets are being blown very quickly, like at Uber. In 3 months, they blew their entire budget for the year for tokens. And, people working on things is cheaper and better in so many respects still. So there's anxiety, there's some doom news, but I would just temper that anxiety with okay, that's not really what we're seeing in the industry across the board. There's still people being hired. Um, you know, we're seeing designers are even more in need right now because
Mhm.
um, they have expertise that's important. Same with developers. So I don't think it's quite as doomy as the picture was painted at the beginning of the year.
Great.
That said, keep
Definitely.
moving forward. Keep moving
Yeah.
forward. That is the game. The only constant in life is change. It's the only constant, and we have to keep moving forward one way or another. All right, well, that might be a good place for us to stop. Joey, thank you so much for generously sharing
So,
today. Thank you everybody for joining. We had a great group today. We hope to see you in more of these events. We do Portfolio Club every week, Wednesdays, and we do other online events as well. So, again, that link, I'm going to post that link. If you're interested in becoming a paid subscriber, 20% off an annual subscription, which is significant. That means a whole year of learning. I think it's about $60 is what that comes down to. So, quite affordable. We want it to be affordable. We want to help you keep learning, keep growing. That's what's exciting to us. So, thanks again, Joey. Thank you, everybody, for
Thank you.
attending. This is recorded and will be available on the website here shortly. Take care, everybody.
thanks everyone.
Thank you.